What up, boxing fans? So I meant to do this video actually yesterday, but just got really tied up. But we had a lot of fights over the weekend, particularly the HBO card. But before I get to that, obviously we saw the second airing of PBC, this time on Spike, as it was a triple header with obviously Chris Arreola fighting early on, and as well as the drawing a blank here, Sean Porter, and then obviously the Andre Berto and Josecito Lopez fight. Now, I don't really want to speak too much on the Chris Arreola fight. I mean, I don't know how many opportunities Chris Arreola is really going to get at this point, man. I mean, he's had, a roller coaster of a career and really has gotten opportunities most heavyweights 15, 20 years ago wouldn't have gotten because of the landscape of the heavyweight division. But I think we've seen the best of Chris Arreola. I think we've seen the best shape Chris Arreola is possibly going to be in, and it wasn't for this fight. He got the win, but even, winning the fight, even he was admittedly not satisfied. And, at this point, man, like, I don't know how much more he could really do. I mean, he's not going to compete with the Deontay Wilders, the Tyson Furies of the world, let alone he's already fought one of the, the older Klitschko. Didn't fare well at all. So I really don't know where he goes from here, man. I mean, I couldn't even consider him a gatekeeper in the sense of like beating Chris Arreola, it being a notch on your belt, or under your belt. But not much really I can say about Chris Arreola, man, honestly. But on to the next fight. Sean Porter originally was supposed to fight Roberto Garcia, and Garcia couldn't even make the weigh-in as he was severely hydrated and was rushed to a hospital. And, for those people who have never attempted to cut weight and don't realize how much goes into cutting weight, if you're somebody who's got to cut a dramatic amount of weight, I think it could be a life or death situation, man. And I think for Roberto Garcia, the fact that he was dehydrated enough to go to the hospital, and I've had experience on two separate occasions of being rushed to the hospital due to dehydration. That shit is not fun, man. And Porter went and got a replacement fight, and did what he was supposed to do. Tough to gauge really as far as the guy he did fight as to what he will do on from here. But look, I think with Sean Porter, we got to kind of start to see that the guy has fought, he's fought Paulie Malignaggi, he's fought Devin Alexander, and he's fought Kell Brook. Hold on one second. All right, yeah, we're running live here. He's fought three credible guys, and he's 2-1 in those fights. So I think we got to start looking at Sean Porter past the notion that he was Manny Pacquiao's, or one of Manny Pacquiao's main sparring partners. So he is making a name for himself. So, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But in my opinion, or at least what I think would be a good fight is the fight against the guy that won the fight after his fight, which was the Andre Berto and Josecito Lopez fight, where Berto came out with a knockout victory. Now, with Josecito Lopez, man, he's a guy, man. I think we tend to forget that was a guy who fought from 140 to 154 in the span of a year. He fought Marcos Maidana and Canelo Alvarez in 1 year and jumped 2 weight classes. So, he's been the expendable guy under Golden Boy during, the last couple of years. And when he came in at the weigh-in, he didn't – I mean, even for a guy who's really – 140-pounder, he didn't look. He looked a little dry at the weigh-in, as where Roberto looked like in great shape. Now, obviously, it's not a bodybuilding contest, but you can gauge a lot from a weigh-in as to how a fighter looks. So, Berto early on was having a little bit of trouble with Lopez. Lopez again, tough, rugged guy that fortunately or unfortunately in his case, sometimes just lets his hands go a little too much, and he pays the price. But he gave Berto a little bit of trouble early on, but Berto just far more superior hand speed and power at that weight. And, he was able to get Josecito out of there in, I think it was a 6th round, if I'm not mistaken. But not a lot to gauge as far as Berto is concerned. As far as to put him up even to fight like a Keith Thurman, I think that would be the wrong fight for him. I think a fight with him and Sean Porter is a nice scrap that you could put as the undercard of a big main event, or maybe showcasing another spike card where those two, main event the card. But again, like it was a decent outing as far as the Spike TV is concerned. I mean, none of the fights were boring necessarily. They were just overmatched. Both guys on the losing end were overmatched in my opinion. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with particularly Sean Porter and Andre Berto. And I think those two guys should be the next fight, for one another. Now on to the HBO card. The actual undercard for the Sergey Kovalev and Jean Pascal fight with Steve Cunningham, and forgive me, his last name is Klozkov. Off the top, I can't remember. I mean, I've been following the guy a bit, or I did prior to this fight, but I don't see where Cunningham only won 4 rounds in that fight, man. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not the greatest judge, but I mean, I think I can sit in most championship fights or most fights and judge a fight pretty well. And I have a very tough time believing that Cunningham only won 4 rounds in that fight. I think that was a horrible, horrible decision. Look, it wasn't a great fight as far as action is concerned. I think Cunningham won enough of the early rounds to get a 116, 112, 115, 113 at that, but to give it a 116, 111 against Cunningham was crazy to me, man. Like, I don't know what these judges were watching, man. And honestly, and even the crowd too, like, I'm sitting there watching it and I'm like, is this crowd even watching the fight? Again, look, it wasn't the most exciting fight, but I mean, even for somebody, who's been watching boxing for a long time, man, I mean, I can judge that fight and tell you that Cunningham clearly won the fight. Not an eventful fight, but enough, in my opinion, that Cunningham should have gotten a clear decision. But for Cunningham, it just sucks because, he's got, I believe this is his 7th loss, and I think he exposed, again, it's killing me, I can't remember this guy's last name, but I think he got exposed a little bit, and I guess it doesn't matter, and I think in prior fights, there were similar situations where, the other guy got kind of screwed. But that's boxing for you, man. It's the unfortunate thing that happens sometimes in the sport where, you could do everything right in the ring and the wrong decision comes out, and it's really unfortunate. And for those who tune into GYGB, the boxing podcast that will be aired tonight, if you're watching this live, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, I'll have the link below. We were trying to get, or I think we're still trying to get Cunningham on for an interview. And obviously we'll talk to him about that fight among other things. But stay tuned for that. If and when it does come about, I will make an announcement. I'll put a link below. But just unfortunate, man, honestly. And on to the main event, Sergey Kovalev versus Jean Pascal. I didn't make a prediction video about it. I did talk about it on the last GYGB podcast. I had Kovalev winning a mid to late round stoppage, and I think he did get it, but I think while Pascal showed his heart, he showed that his awkward style and almost a dangerous style in a way where he's hard to kind of time in some fashions, and he's a hard to gauge in a way where he doesn't do the same things over and over where it he's irky jerky, like they say, where it could be a benefit to him or a detriment. And I think we saw both of those play out in the fight, where early on we see Kovalev, man, you're starting to see if not already, that this guy is the truth. He brings in more than just being a power puncher. Good footwork, good punch selection. I think what we maybe saw with him is somebody who, or at least in the early stages of the fight, where a lot of us even saw Pascal was on his way out. And I think maybe Kovalev just overcommitted and maybe just lost track that this guy, Pascal, can hit. Awkward. He lands those little looping right hands. And Kovalev caught some of those, man. And in some instances, I think he got stunned. But I don't think he was hurt so much that Pascal turned the fight around. I think what we saw was Kovalev, again, he made some mistakes, kind of put himself out there a little bit, calmed down, and then was kind of went back to just jabbing. And every time he threw that right hand and he connected on Pascal, Pascal's body language showed. And I think maybe that's why Kovalev opened himself up a little more, and he realized, like, okay, this guy's, you know, he's got a bigger heart than we thought, even though Kovalev did say, like, oh, he didn't show his heart. I wouldn't agree with that. He said something in the press conference, but Kovalev, he's actually a funny guy when it comes to the press conferences. But in any case, that's another subject. You know, I think with Pascal, look, I think with I think he showed that, you know, Pascal is, you know, I wouldn't call him a one-trick pony, but I think if you get away, and I said this before, if you get away from his awkwardness and you take him into the later rounds, you got him. And I think that's what happened. I mean, I think Kovalev calmed down a little bit and was just the punch selection and just the array of shots that he was throwing was too much for Pascal to handle. And I think the dangerous part with Kovalev is that he's got size on him, but he can box and he can move. And we saw that in the Hopkins fight. And for as defensive for a 50-year-old that Hopkins still is, he still made it very difficult for Hopkins to evade and consistently keep Kovalev away from him. And with Pascal, I saw the same thing playing out. I mean, I think the awkwardness was going to be a situation for Kovalev early on. I think after the fact, once he caught on, it was a wrap. So Kovalev, at this point, man. Well, let me, before I get to the next subject, as far as who he should fight next. As far as the stoppage is concerned, when it first happened, I was like, that's kind of a weird stoppage. But looking back at the fight, looking at the punishment that Pascal was taking in that round and in preceding that, I think it was a good stoppage. Pascal's going to go on to fight another day. And I think if the ref would have let that fight continue from when it did, I think, you know, Pascal could have been seriously hurt. And I think at that point, man, I think he was seeing two different Kovalevs. It was a good stoppage, man. And I think this really just even furthermore cements the fact that Kovalev is the light heavyweight in boxing today. Now, the question is, who's next up to fight Kovalev? And I don't think there's anybody that the boxing world wants to see him in with other than Adonis Stevenson. Now, Adonis Stevenson is signed to Al Haymon. Now, in my opinion, I don't think that this fight with Adonis Stevenson and Kovalev is going to be the immediate next fight. I would be very, very, very shocked if it was. I think we still got to look at the fact that, number one, Adonis Stevenson, like I said, is with Al Haymon. And Sergey Kovalev is with Main Events, who is ran by Kathy Duva. And, you know, when you look at Kathy Duva and Al Haymon and the fact that both of them, or at least Kathy Duva, is coming off her NBC deal, and, you know, Al Haymon, in a sense, took over that whole situation. When you look at as far as how to make that fight, what network is going to take it, and so forth, I still think this is a deal where one Cold War was ended, and another one maybe has been built, as we're with Al Haymon working with other promoters on this level. because Sergey Kovalev is the main guy at light heavyweight. So when you go to the negotiations table and you have Al Heyman, who's giving these guys boatloads of money to fight, Joe Schmo, not for everybody, but in this case with Adonis Stevenson, since being with Al Heyman has not fought really anybody, it becomes a deal where how do they parlay this into a fight? Does it become a purse bid war? What network is going to carry the fight? Sergey Kovalev is an HBO fighter. Adonis Stevenson's a Showtime fighter. Now, with the Mayweather-Pacquiao deal, we saw HBO and Showtime come together to make a fight, but look how much money is being made collectively between Showtime and HBO and both fighters to make that fight happen. A lot of red tape was cut through to make it happen, and I don't think Kovalev and Stevenson, as big a fight at light heavyweight it is, I don't think that's the situation that is going to be an easy fight to make per se. Now, in my opinion, Kovalev is in a position, I believe, that he should get every right or every demand given to him over Adonis Stevenson. But like I said, easier said than done. You ask me, I don't think that fight happens even this year. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm gonna play. I'm gonna be the guy that is believing this fight won't happen. Now another name immediately following the Kovalev fight that has come up and has come up even before this fight is a fight with Andre Ward and Sergey Kovalev. Now Andre Ward has not fought in over or close to a year and a half. He just signed a very lucrative Rock Nation deal that is going to put him back in the ring, but we have yet to see him even in there with an opponent or even a rumored opponent. So the call right now is like while Ward and some people want Ward or Triple G to come up and fight Andre Ward, now you got some other people who are looking at Sergey Kovalev and a fight with Andre Ward as a fight, maybe some other people are going to start to chime in about, while, Golovkin is going to continue to fight at 160, or at least with it for the next year or so, or I would say the next year. But with Andre Ward already clearing out 168 pounds, one may question Andre Ward as to why he doesn't take the leap to one weight class up, like some are saying for Golovkin to move one weight class up if there's no competition at 160 to fight the number one fighter a weight class up. I guess it's double standards for some people, but in my opinion, I think that's a fight most boxing fans would be running and hopping fences to see, meaning a Kovalev versus Andre Ward fight. But again, that's a fight I do not see happening anytime soon. So who does Kovalev fight, man? At 175, man, it's kind of like 160 pounds where there isn't a huge talent pool. Look, he already beat Pascal, who what is a former light heavyweight champion. And Adonis Stevenson is the only guy there. So if that fight isn't made, I honestly think Kovalev is just going to be similar to Golovkin, where he's just going to be fighting these guys that they're just feeding to them, or feeding to him that potentially he may be overmatched. So again, I hope I'm wrong. I hope this somehow, I don't know how it's going to happen. Kathy Duve and Al Heyman meeting. And if anybody hasn't noticed, Kathy Duve has been very vocal about Al Heyman's acquisition of these network deals and the fact that he's putting his own money. And, she's said her opinions as far as how that's going to work into the future. Again, we'll see. So that's pretty much it right now, man. We're going to be on tonight, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time for the GYGB Boxing Podcast. I will be putting the link below, and you can feel free to chime in, call in, give your opinions. We're going to be talking about, these fights I mentioned, the fights coming up in the next week or weeks into next month, and obviously May 2nd, I don't even need to tell you what that date is. We will obviously be giving the updates about Mayweather Pacquiao and a whole bunch of other shit. So, as I always say, subscribe, hit the links, and good looks to everybody out there that's been subscribing, getting hella subscriptions, doing these live chats, man. So it's been easier to do than doing the 1080p high res videos that are still coming. Just planning out some interviews with some fighters, pro and amateur, which I'll be doing the high res whole shindig. So stay tuned and let me know what you thought about the fights this weekend. And like I said, tune in tonight, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, GYGB boxing podcast with myself and Coltrane. And as I always say, subscribe, hit the links, and I'll be back with you soon.